So dreams sure are an interesting thing, aren't they? Yesterday I finished listening to, and I had a very interesting dream last night. That's where I'm going with this. Yesterday I finished listening to this Chris Williamson podcast with Jett, who I still haven't visited his page to like check out his stuff, but I really enjoyed the conversation with Chris Williamson on modern wisdom. I'll share the link below. But they talked about Jet's growth. He posted 1,100 videos before he got 1,000 subscribers on YouTube, and then there was a little bit of conversation about his growing out of a victim mindset and how he's found some level of success. And then Chris gave him some advice about kind of what comes next and how to protect his creative process and that kind of thing. It was a fascinating conversation to me, but they also talked about all kinds of interesting things related to that actual experience, of growing out of a victim sort of mindset. And a lot of it resonated with me because I would absolutely say that I had that. I'm growing out of it. Obviously, I'm trying to leverage YouTube in some capacity as far as like, you know, building the next chapter of my life. And we don't have to explicitly define what that looks like because I don't know what it looks like, and I like being open to not knowing what that looks like. But one of the things they said on that podcast was about the Super Bowl, and one of the things that happens with a little bit of like success and attention and notoriety, whatever it is, your network grows and people are more interested in talking to you, being around you, partnering with you, all that kind of stuff, and inviting you to the Super Bowl. That was kind of like the I don't know, metaphor kind of. It wasn't actually about being invited to the Super Bowl, but that is something that can come with being around higher net worth individuals, going to those types of social events and sitting in a box and being invited and not having to pay and blah 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 blah. Like, it comes with you establishing yourself in some way. It's one of the things that I've been very afraid of, like subconsciously or consciously of the subconsciously. I've been afraid of being taken advantage of again because I've felt like I've been taken advantage of in the past. Not only when I was like thriving, because like, yeah, I came from a victim mindset, but before that, like, I won a full scholarship to university, man. Like, I was the golden child. I found success first, and then I dug myself into the valley. Like, I know what it feels like to be at the mountaintop. So I'm not just talking about only being a victim. Like, I was the champion, okay? I was the champion of everything. I was the most athletic. I was the captain of every team. I was the smartest kid. I had the literal top grade in every class that I was in high school. I volunteered all the time, and all the teams wanted me on their team, like the volunteering team. Like, I did all kinds of different things. The girls all wanted me. The parents all loved me. Like, I was the blueprint of perfect. And I know what that feels like. And I'm not saying that I was perfect, but I'm saying I know what it feels like to accomplish everything that you are to accomplish. And I think that's what informed the following chapters of my life, and then the subsequent like victim mentality of it didn't work out for me and I hate everything because I put my everything into everything and I got nothing back. And what was the point of all that? Because you told me if I got a degree and a job then life was perfect, and life was not perfect. And you told me if I got married and did this and had a mortgage it would be perfect, and it wasn't. And why do I want to end everything? Like, the victim mentality. Because then I also went into like, what's the purpose of this? Like, why do we do this? And that's where my daughter was introduced into the story, and she kind of helped keep me grounded and informed, by the way, about things like emotions and purpose and spirituality and human development. So more on that in different videos, but the whole point of this one was about this dream that I had last night. And to connect all the dots, it was that piece about the Super Bowl that resonated, because it was like, yeah, people will be more drawn to your success. I know what that feels like. But then they'll take advantage of you. That's something I was afraid of. And as I've pursued previous entrepreneurial endeavors, there's always been something that subconsciously sabotaged me, and we love that word in social media. The word sabotage gets used so much. Self-sabotage is such an awesome buzzword, right? So I don't mean to like throw around the buzzword, but yes, I did subconsciously like hold myself back from really leaning into or falling into things completely in different businesses. And I think one of the reasons, not the reason, one of the reasons was I didn't want to be taken advantage of again. I was very much afraid of lots of things. Like, we don't need to go into all the reasons, but I didn't want to be taken advantage of again or feel like I was. And, that held me back from vulnerability. So, this point about Chris Williamson and Jett, when they said, when you grow and then people, want to be around you more and they enjoy your company more, and you get invited to the Super Bowl to sit in a box, it resonated with me on such a level, and I really enjoyed it. And by the way, British guy talking about it, I love that he was part of that conversation. But obviously, it went into my brain. Okay, it resonated so much that last night I had a dream about attending or about the Super Bowl. Okay, so and it was like a two-part thing. And not to set the stage, because dreams are a little crazy and wacky, but like there were two chunks of Super Bowl event. Like, okay, so try again. Okay, settle down, man. Settle down. There were two segments of this dream. In the first segment, the Super Bowl was on TV, and I was in a restaurant and I was serving, I was helping, and I felt like I was volunteering. It didn't feel like I was working for somebody else. It felt like it was my business. And it's funny because it was chai, and I think it was a bar, but we were serving chai to some people who really just wanted chai. And it felt like a new business in a startup environment because the lids didn't quite fit on the cups, and we hadn't done this 100 times. It felt like it was the second or third time we were doing this. I say it's funny because I used to have a chai business. And in the dream, the Super Bowl was on TV. Like, it was during the Super Bowl. And I, as a huge NFL fan, have always made time for that game. A lot of games, NFL games, like playoffs and whatever. But like the Super Bowl, I was like sat down to watch. And in the dream, I was working. I was helping people with their chai, and it was volunteering. So it felt like volunteering. Maybe I was the owner of the business. I don't know. But it didn't feel like I was upset about it. Like it felt like I was okay with doing this work. And it reminded me of obviously owning and running the chai business, where I enjoyed, sharing this product with people. I loved like seeing people's reactions and like knowing that they enjoyed what we were providing to them. As a business owner, like if your product is valued that way, it does something for your emotions as well, your mentals. As much as you enjoy the revenue stream, like you're not going to make as much money if you're only in it for the revenue as if you enjoy it with your heart. And I did when I served that chai to people. And that's kind of what it felt like. So it reminded me of that. And it also reminded me of like my minimum wage, like when I was serving coffee to people, which was like, within the last 3-4 years. I did that after my engineering career, yes. It reminded me of those days as well, where you were just like very direct, interacting with customers and people and looking them in the face and having conversations. It's not like sitting in an office, right? You're not interacting with customers when you have an office job. So very interesting, very, very interesting that it was during the Super Bowl, and then kind of like flipped over, and then it was a different Super Bowl, but it felt like it kind of transitioned. The dream transitioned right away. It was a different Super Bowl, and it started with this high camera angle panning down into this boardroom with floor to ceiling windows all the way around. It felt like the entire thing was like in this glass enclosure, and it was clearly near or in the stadium. So it felt like it was like the box experience that Chris Williamson and Jett were talking about, like, oh, being invited to the box. It felt more corporate. And from that camera angle and then coming down into it, there was this boardroom where lots of people sitting around. Maybe I'll draw it because it was. I have a pen in my hand, anyways. It was like obviously Okay, let's see how well I can draw it. Like this is the room, you know, you have your boardroom and all the chairs, and I was sitting here, and I didn't even know it was me when I first entered it, right? And all these people were my coworkers. Like somehow I was on the same team as these people. And this is all glass all around. Like I think the floors were glass. There was the field over here, and I could see all the fans and everything. So we were very much like part of the experience. And there was like more fun stuff around here. But here I was sitting in the boardroom, and I was somehow I was coaching this team on their prompts or something like that, and they were pitching to like these guys. They were talking about EBITDA, earnings before interest, debt, taxes, and amortization. Okay, if you know what EBITDA is, big company corporate uses that term all the time. If you don't know what it is, earnings before interest, debt, taxes, and amortization, like kind of like a revenue term for large companies use, because they actually have to address all of these things in ways that small businesses don't. Small businesses don't really worry about their, you know, amortization on their assets as much as these multi-billion dollar companies do. So they use this term. And so in the dream, this term was used. Okay. This person, my team, was talking about EBITDA, which to me, I only share that to say like this was the contrast of the dream. And remember, this is a different Super Bowl. Okay. There were different teams. The first one, the Packers were playing, and this one, I think the 49ers were playing. They were on the field, and it was like red colors, and in the bar, the chai, it was the Packers. So in this one, different Super Bowl, right? So different setting, not the same time. But the contrast in my brain, which obviously, and you should already gather this by now, but like I so believe in dreams because they're like subconscious projections. Like they tell us a lot of, give us a lot of insights about what our subconscious minds are doing. Dreams, I don't think, are random, and I'm not the philosopher to talk about where they come from and all that shit, but I do enjoy analyzing them, and I think that they're meaningful. That's why I'm sharing all this. But I also share the term partially so that, you know, I bring some accountability to my name. So you don't, you know, that I have some kind of corporate experience because, yeah, I did this for 10 years and all that. Hashtag marketing. But also just to tell you, like, this was what my brain was doing. Like, this is the contrast, the level of contrast that my brain was showing me. So as this person is talking about EBITDA, I'm just going to say that 17 times in this video. Something gets interrupted and somebody says, "Oh, the game is starting." And then suddenly there's this giant TV over here on the wall. And I just remember it. So interesting. The guy sitting here at the head of the table is wearing a gray suit, white shirt, red tie, the same shade as the 49er, red. He's an old white guy. And he has this giant bowl of popcorn, and he hands it to me. And he says, "Excited about the game, huh?" And he like takes this handful of popcorn and he starts eating it. And I was like, "What the fuck is going on?" And the game had started, and everybody suddenly was fixated on the TV. We were no longer talking corporate business talk anymore, but it was muted. There was no noise. We couldn't hear the sound from the stadium. We couldn't hear like the broadcast, nothing. It was muted. It was quiet in the room, and we were just expected. I was like, is this the Super Bowl experience in the box? You know? Like corporate talk, no enjoyment of the sport, and now we're just supposed to sit here and watch the game with a bowl of popcorn, and you thinking that just because you took your blazer off and put it on the back of your chair that you're in relax mode now. And I think it was kind of like a hilarious, I think, representation of, hey, this is what it's like to be in a corporate box, because I've been in those too, by the way. They're not that stiff, but like you're still expected to be like networking and shit like that in there. I've done it at hockey games before. Anyways, I just wanted to share this because I thought it was a really interesting like contrast. I thought it was a really interesting like flower that had grown from something that had been planted in my subconscious mind, and maybe something that like I think is worth thinking about for all of us when we have these dreams. The contrast was fascinating, but representative of my experiences. The Super Bowl metaphor is interesting, and it's such a it's so true because it's like in society it's such a like big deal, the Super Bowl, and I just thought it was an interesting story. So thanks for watching. I don't know how else to end these videos now. If you watch me for 15 minutes, I think you enjoyed me saying stuff. There's nothing I'm going to say at the end to like captivate you and blah. But I do think I need some kind of sign up. Anyways, I'm out of here.